نتابع أعمال المؤتمر مع
We will proceed with the fourth panel, which is entitled Successful International Experiences in Education. Panel chair is Mr. Jum'a Rumethi, Director of the Scholarship Office, Ministry of Presidential Affairs. Please, the floor is yours. Assalamu alaikum. Ladies and gentlemen, I will be talking in English because it is the language to speak with our guests here.
We are indeed privileged to be part of this annual education conference. The aim of such an event, in my opinion, is to review and enhance the strategic objectives that will serve best the future of the UAE's labor market, human capital, and trends that will ensure our country's readiness for the fourth industrial revolution, in line with the global trends. I'm also delighted to welcome you all to this panel, which is about successful international experiences in education. Our distinguished guest will present 3 different education experiences and different approaches in learning. All of the 3 education systems are well regarded internationally and considered successful. Additionally, the uniqueness of these 3 different education systems drew a global attention where so many countries started to benchmark, compare, and contrast their education system. Others started to evaluate and analyze whether it's feasible to develop such an education system. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce my first guest, Professor Guaning Su, President Emeritus of Nanyang Technology University, Republic of Singapore. Professor Su also serves on the International Advisory Board of King Abdulaziz University and chairs the International Advisory Board of Hong Kong Polytechnic University. Please welcome Professor Su.
Very good morning to everyone. I want to thank, first of all, ECSSR for inviting me here. This is a rare opportunity to address one of the most forward-looking Arab countries. And it is a country that I had a look around the last couple of days, and I'm really impressed with the progress that has been made in this country. I've been asked to talk about successful educational experiences, the Singapore example. I think in Singapore, I think Professor Loh will share the feeling with me that we don't claim to be successful. We think we have done reasonably well, but there's a lot more to be done. I think Professor Loh's program, for example, is one of the things that we're trying to do for the future. I wanted to talk about it from a very much more personal level because I myself am a product of the Singapore education system. But it is a trajectory that cuts across many major changes in Singapore, starting with independence and self-government. Myself, I was born in Taiwan. I was not born in Singapore, where I attended 2 years of kindergarten. After 2 years of primary school in Malaysia, I had the rest of my schooling in Singapore. 8 years in the Chinese stream and 2 in the English. I will explain this later. I was awarded the President and Colombo Plan scholarships and studied engineering in Canada. So Canada is one of the systems at that time that I was familiar with. Subsequently, I did 4 years of graduate school at Caltech and Stanford in the United States, culminating in a PhD. I was one of the early participants in Singapore's defense research. Singapore research, I would say, really started with defense because of the forward-looking defense minister we had at the time. Then I participated in the teaching program at the National University of Singapore as an adjunct professor for about 10 years. From 1996 to 2002, I was also governing council member of Nanyang Technological University. On 1st of January 2003, I was appointed president of Nanyang Technological University. It was the culmination of my involvement in Singapore education, so much so that most of the time when I give talks today, it is on education. I had assembled a team that we dubbed the Troika because there are three of us, one of whom is Swede, who chooses the Nobel Prize. The third one is a retired professor from Stanford, from whom we borrow many of the administrative systems. We transformed and raised the standing of the university, which is now ranked as high as 11th in the world by the QS University Rankings 2020. In Singapore, education is a favorite complaint topic. Everybody complains that there's something wrong with the education system. So it's very nice to come to a foreign country where people say we have a good education system. But complaints, we complain because we want it to be better. I mean, I had children who went through the Singapore education system myself, and I have complaints myself too. Everyone thinks they can do better than the education minister of the day. There's a subliminal message in Singapore everywhere, which I found here a little bit as well, that education is a critical factor in progress and prosperity, and lifelong learning is the only way to personal progress and success. Now, let's turn back the clock. 200 years. We just celebrated 200 years of colonial history. Not something usually you celebrate, but on the other hand, that is the start of our modernization as a free port. An Englishman named Stanford Raffles signed an agreement in 1819 with the local Sultan who ruled over lands that included the island of Singapore. Our colonial history lasted 140 years until 1959, when we attained self-government. That began the development of Singapore and the development of Singapore education system. It was under our founding Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew. This man is, I think, is a legend by now. He passed away in 2015. He truly did build Singapore from the third world to the first. He extended Singapore's influence way beyond what a tiny nation of 5 million people normally gets. His governing of Singapore relied to a large extent on his grasp of the importance of education, as well as his stubborn insistence on our bilingual language policy in education. I guess there's something in parallel here as well, because Arabic and English are both important in this country. English was chosen as the common working language because we had 3 major ethnic groups, and the mother tongue was taught for cultural ballast for each of the 3 ethnic groups. So the Chinese learn Chinese, the Malays learn Malay, and the Indians learn Tamil, if they are Tamil in origin. This breaks down completely the old established 4-language stream education in the colonial times, and rebuilds the system into a single national education system. It was a key element of nation building. Otherwise, we'll be fighting each other maybe like in Hong Kong. Lee Kuan Yew wrote this book on Singapore's bilingual journey, and he calls it his lifelong challenge. Okay, this decision of going to a bilingual education system basically pulled everybody away from the mother tongue and the cultural roots. And it was one of the most bold things that Lee Kuan Yew did. He considered it his lifelong challenge, because he believed in setting an example himself. Right up to his passing, he took regular Chinese lessons from professors. Now, I remember this morning when I was talking with our friend from Finland. She was talking about dropout rates. One of the early things we did to settle the dropout rates was Dr. Goh Keng Swee, one of the primary assistants of Lee Kuan Yew, who did a streaming. He actually used a team of system engineers to look at we had a streaming process. Essentially, the idea is to tailor the education system to the ability of the child. And this was done by testing the child at primary 6, that means grade 6, and splitting them into 3 streams. And what we call the normal stream, we take a little longer time to cover the material. What we call the express stream is the normal at that time. And then we also have a special stream which has extra lessons on other things. Based on this, we distribute the people into vocational, technical, and university levels education. So each one will have a way of making a living. But the pressure comes because the exam at primary 6 is a very important one that determines these streams, and the parents put a lot of pressure on their kids. That is something that we're trying to solve. Our education system since the beginning was tailored for economic growth. It was tied very closely to the economic strategy. We started as a low-cost manufacturing destination, at which basic literacy and numeracy was sufficient. We graduated to precision manufacturing. Technician and skilled laborers were then required. And we always take shortcuts if we can. So the shortcuts we were able to take at that time was to tap the multinational corporations for training. For example, Rolai from Germany was our principal trainer for precision engineering. Basically, we asked them to train a little bit extra so that the rest of the industry can also tap the people. The 3 countries we ultimately ended up relying upon are Japan, Germany, and France. And today they are part of Nanyang Polytechnic. Manpower planning was a primary input to the education system. In other words, the Economic Development Board that drives the economic development of Singapore determines how many we need on what sort of category, vocational, technical, university level, and the education system tries to satisfy that. This is a chart of the Singapore education system that you can find on the Ministry of Education website. Is there a pointer I can use here? Never mind. I'll just start at the very beginning, which is starting on the left. We have the primary school leaving examination, which is the thing in the on the left, the blue in the middle there. And from that, we split into the 3 streams. The important thing about the Singapore education system is even though it's split into 3 streams, they cross each other. If you do well on one stream, you can get into the higher stream. And we have had examples of students who were in the lowest stream and work his way up to the technical stream and then work his way up to the university stream. So this is actually quite important so that late developers don't suffer. So this is the description of the 3 streams, the normal stream, which takes an N-level examination after 10 years. And then if they do well, they do the O-level examination after 11 years. The express stream does the O-levels after 10 years, and then the A-levels after 12 years. And some of them go to the Polytechnic. The integrated program, they do only A-levels and then to university. Polytechnic diplomas also allow some of them to go to university. And now the new flavor of the day is that we focus very much on continuing education workforce development programs, where the government gives working adults up to 70% subsidies to do continuing education so that they can go into new fields that has come up and when the old fields have disappeared. So this is one of the features that we try to put in to handle the Industry 4.0 situation. And the results show for itself. The red line is the Singapore GDP per capita. The green line is the US. We are more or less matching the US now. But of course, I wouldn't say this is a fair comparison, because the fair comparison would be Singapore against New York City, which New York City is still quite a lot higher than Singapore. The one to watch out for is the blue line coming out, which is China. And China today has reached about 10,000, over 10,000 US dollars per capita. And it is moving to challenge the US in terms of technology. Although, in my own view, the challenge in technology against the US is still far from powerful. China has still a long way to go in order to create the innovative and creative kind of system that the US has. And this is something I think Professor Loh was also trying to do with her programs. PISA assessments is one of the international assessments by OECD to test every 3 years 15-year-old students. And then there's another one called TIMSS, which is International Maths and Science Study, testing mathematics and science for grade 4 and grade 8 students. This is run by the International Association for the Evaluation of Educational Achievement with Boston College. These were the results that Singapore has. It's a pretty bright report card. In 2015, we were number 1 in all 3 for PISA. And in 2015, we were also number 1 for both the grade 4 and grade 8 in science and mathematics. Now, you would think that based on these results, we can just rest on our laurels. But far from it. Our parents in Singapore don't believe that these PISA rankings reflect how our students are being taught. Basically because this is an indication that our system is able to produce high averages. In other words, our average student has a high level of educational attainment and content. But on the other hand, there are many anecdotal evidences that we feel that the high pressure environment to achieve in Singapore's education system is going to suffocate the innovative and creative thinkers that leads, for example, to the Nobel Prize or other kind of top world achievements. So we are now working on how to maintain the high averages while cultivating the geniuses. By the way, the university rankings in QS 2020, both NUS and NTU are rated at number 11.
Professor So, the time is up. I'm sorry.
2 minutes?
Okay, 2 minutes, please.
Okay. The McKinsey report on top performance of PISA 2007 says that the quality of an education system cannot exceed the quality of its teachers. And I think one of the main factors of our achievement is because of the National Institute of Education, which is part of my university, NTU. There are a lot of programs between National Institute of Education and the Ministry of Education. They will work very closely together. First of all, every teacher is trained for a year as a teacher, no matter what degree you have. And then you have research on teaching pedagogies. We have continuing education for teachers. The leaders in schools are also trained, and they have very good partnership with the ministry and schools. And teachers' stature and recognition is high in Singapore. First of all, we have scholarships to recruit the very best into teaching, and then we have formal investiture ceremonies, professional career path. The President has an award for teachers for good teaching, and we also have professional development opportunities for those who choose teaching as a career, not administration. Issues going forward: how do we train our teachers to be more of a coach than a priest for the upper levels, while sustaining the pastoral care and guidance at the lower levels? These are dilemmas we're struggling with and working on. The streaming system causes severe competition. How do we moderate this without suffering from a lower average? Can we do both high averages and outlier talents well? We're not sure. We're still struggling to find a solution. Then we have schools which are elite. They are particularly better than others because of tradition, because of alumni. How do we balance between the elite schools' cultivation and fairness and resource allocation among all our schools? So in conclusion, we think that Singapore has done well so far, basically because of four things: system thinking right from the very beginning, investment of resources. This is always the highest usage of government budget besides defense. Efficient implementation, we have an excellent civil service that's very good at implementation. And readiness to change. We listen to all kinds of opinions from all over the world, and I hope to hear ideas from the subsequent talks by Canada and Finland so that we can see what we can borrow from them. And of course, the audience, your comments and ideas on how to overcome our challenges are most welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Professor Su. And now we will move to our second distinguished guest, Professor Sol Carolina, who is the Director of Educational Technology Program in Concordia University in Canada. Professor Carolina has published more than 200 articles, book chapters, and preceding chapters, and he is also an industry consultant. Please welcome Professor Carolina.
While they're getting my slides up, I want to thank, first of all, the ECSSR for this amazing opportunity to be a part of this conference. I'd like to thank the staff for making me feel incredibly comfortable and taking care of all of my needs. And last, I'd like to thank all of the other speakers from whom I have learned so very much. I'm here today to talk about Canada's successful educational experience. And I'm going to primarily focus on higher education because that's the context I know the best. And I will also be throwing in a little bit of lifelong learning along the way. One of the statistics that distinguishes Canadian higher education is that we have a higher level of participation in higher ed than most other developed nations. In Canada, it's 54.7%, and I may be off by a point there, have participated and have some postgraduate education or post-high school education, and it's about 36.7% for the rest of the OECD. That may be a somewhat stilted figure because it also includes the immigrants to Canada, most of whom are economic immigrants and who have to have higher education in order to enter the country. So that's why I say those numbers are just one measure of success. We have a number of other key factors contributing to the success of higher education. And so what I'd like to do today is actually talk about each of these factors. And I'm going to close by talking about probably the biggest challenge, certainly in Canada and because I'm also American to the US, and that's what happens with people who have finished their formal education but are continuing in the workforce or the lifelong education. So the first thing I'd like to talk about are the unique structures that we have in Canada. I I work and live in the province of Quebec, which, if you're not familiar with it, is considered French Canada. It's not the only place where Francophones live, but it's the only province in Canada whose legal language is just French. It's not bilingual legally. It is bilingual on a practical level. But we also have a unique educational system in Quebec, and that's because the Canadian educational system is completely decentralized. There is no federal education policy. The few attempts to create one have not really gone well, so each province runs their own. And in the 1960s, the province of Quebec completely reformed its system. And one of the most unique features of the Quebec system is something called CEGEP, which is an acronym for the Collège d'enseignement général et professionnel. And basically, it's a bridge school. High school goes to grade 11, not to grade 12. University begins in the second year. And for grade 12 of high school and the first year of university, our students go to a CEGEP. And in the CEGEP, they have a transition period of time. They only pay fees, they do not pay tuition. And they get more attention from their teachers than they would get at university. And the other thing about CEGEPs is they do both pre-university teaching as well as vocational and technical education. So they've got a double mission. And in fact, what I'd like to do, we have a number of different kinds of educational structures in higher ed, and each one serves a very unique function. So as I mentioned, the CEGEP is pre-university in general. They also have a vocational education mission, and finally they have a continuing education mission. And as I mentioned before, they do 12th grade, first year of university, vocational education, as well as language training, which is incredibly important in all of Canada because we have a significant number of immigrants. We take in approximately 500,000 immigrants across the country each year. In addition, in the province of Quebec, because the language of business is French, and many of the people immigrating, including me, do not speak it as our first language, there's a significant need for French as a second language education also. In the other provinces and territories of Canada, you have something called a college. And a college is very similar to a CEGEP, except that the students enter it after 12th grade. So they have a vocational education mission for sure. They also have a technical education mission. So a lot of technical education that you would see in a typical VOTEC, they offer. In addition, they offer paraprofessional education in a number of different fields. And they range from things like dental hygiene and interior design, but also to technical communication and training and development. And finally, you have continuing education units in these groups. And they serve voc ed students, language training students, and the third group there, which I listed in second, is retrainees. Especially in other provinces, you will see a number of people who have finished their formal degree. They have a bachelor's degree, usually in the social sciences or humanities, and they're looking to get job-related skills. And so they partner that with a one-year degree from a college, and they become very powerful applicants on the job market. The third structure, and the one that gets the most attention and the most money, are the universities. And the university education is relatively consistent across Canada, even if it's not regulated. And like most university systems, we offer traditional bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, and doctoral degrees. And it's been a tremendous focus on postdoctoral education that was mentioned earlier today. Canada has done that, and my employment itself is actually representative of that. I'm probably one of the last Americans to be brought in to an academic appointment, certainly in my department. We're getting our candidates from Canada now. So I think that's really kind of says about the growth of that postdoctoral education, postgraduate education. We also have two other structures there. There's continuing education, and the continuing education market primarily focuses on language training, like the other two, in the other two types of schools. In addition, it also does vocational training, but mostly in paraprofessional fields. In addition, we also have graduate certificates and diplomas that are like, and the best way of describing them, they're like light versions of our master's degrees. And while it was mentioned earlier that the master's degree is seen in many contexts as a postgraduate or a research degree, and I know that our government officially looks at it that way, if you look at the curriculum, they actually post as professional preparation degrees. Our students in universities are academic students, professional education students, and these are mostly in the licensed professions like law, accounting, medicine. liberal arts education, which has traditionally been the realm of university. We have what I call professional add-on. So people have a bachelor's degree, they want a professional degree, they'll go back. Some of our universities offer a one-year postgraduate degree to become a teacher, for example. Others offer a second degree to become an accountant. And finally, we also do language training. There are a number of different supports for success. One of the strategies that most Canadian provinces instituted many years ago was that they wanted to significantly increase the number of students who participated in higher ed. Many of them would have difficulty, and they knew that. So the idea was, we're going to put in the support to help them through this experience. So one of them is remedial education, and along with that, specific focus on writing skills support and mathematics skills support. We also have support for students with learning and other disabilities, and because of the stress that goes on with being a university student, we have a number of counseling and psychological services. And most recently, we've been adding support for open educational resources, which, if you're not familiar with them, it's a movement to make textbooks open and accessible for free. And so my university, for example, has a special grant program for professors to develop open educational resources. And in this way, we can make the education more accessible because students don't have to pay for their textbooks. Another thing that's really grown in the last several years are opportunities for work-integrated learning, where we integrate the experience of working and the experience of going to school. The most commonly known one are internships. And internships come in two varieties. There's an internship where you go out in the workforce and you're primarily observing, and those are typical in the early years of medical internships, and they're also typical in the early years of teaching internships. The second type of internship is where you're actually going out and doing productive work, and those internships are always paid. We have cooperative education, which is very similar to an internship, but unlike an internship, cooperative education does not get credit. However, what a student typically does is they take the last year of their undergraduate program over 2 years, and they alternate work terms with academic terms. And what's interesting is in Canada, most of the students that go on the cooperative education route, they will switch employers every term. That contrasts with my experience in the US, where students would go to the same employer every 3 months. So they go to 3 months with the employer, they go back to school, they come back to the employer. In Canada, they go to school they work for an employer, they go back to school, they go to a different employer. But we also have other types of work-integrated learning experiences. Service learning is very popular. That's where we bring the real world into the classroom, and the projects that we give, problem-based, are for real organizations, so there's a chance that the organization might actually adopt that work. And finally, we have other types of educational events where we bring students in contact with people from the working world so they can begin to develop their networks. There's an emphasis on durable curricula, and what I mean by that is Canadian schools generally don't add really trendy degrees. What they do instead is they try to make sure that their courses are up to date. They offer symposia that allow students and alumni to interact with one another, and everyone can update their knowledge. And then they can repackage some of their degrees, especially the master's degrees, as stackable credentials, where you get a certificate, you get another certificate, and in the Quebec system especially, you get 3 graduate certificates, you can earn a master's degree with that, instead of enrolling specifically in a master's program. One of the most exciting developments for me is the growth of complementary curricula. There's been a lot of talk at this conference about the need to develop these workplace skills or 21st century skills. The problem is, when you look at most competency models, the skills that we develop in our academic programs are occupational skills, and the kinds of skills needed that are 21st century skills generally don't fall into that domain. They're still important, we try to emphasize them academically, but we know that there's limits to what we can do because of the time that we've got. So what we've done both at the undergraduate and the graduate level, we've introduced special programs that students can take that cover subjects like these: communication and digital capabilities, leadership and collaboration, career development, innovation and entrepreneurship, health and wellness, global citizenship, academic success and exploration. And these are intended to prepare students for the workplace. A couple of other really neat things about these programs. Even though they are not for academic credit, they do show up on the student transcript. We offer something called the complementary transcript, which means Programs that are important, that are part of the undergraduate or graduate experience, but aren't credited as academic credit, still show up on the transcript. And I've had a really great privilege. I supervised an internship where the student was actually helping launch the undergraduate program. And it was based on a very successful graduate program. And it's fun to watch because they're no longer constrained by the typical 3-hour-a-week, meet every week for a period of time. And they've really experimented with a lot of interesting structures for getting this knowledge across. But probably the biggest challenge that we face in Canada right now, and in the US and most of the developing world, is demographics. And let me explain. Demand for bachelor's degrees are down. And that's because we just simply don't have the bodies to fill the space. People have had fewer children, and when you'd have fewer children 18 years ago, there are fewer of them to enter university now. Part of the way we fill that up is that we do open our schools to international students. But the largest source of new workers, certainly in the North American workforce, is current workers. That means most of the people who are going to be working in our workforce in the next 20, 30, 40 years are already there, and they need to be retrained. And so demand for master's degrees is significantly on the upswing. And in fact, to give you an idea, there was a prediction from InsideHigherEd.com, which is one of the major trade press for the US, and they estimated that demand for bachelor's degrees was going to grow 12%, but demand for master's degrees is going to grow 24% over the next 10 years. And so this is actually my area of research. What do we do with these older workers? We tend to focus on the younger people because we don't realize most of the people who need to be reskilled, most of the people who are going to be affected by the fourth industrial revolution are people who are going to actually be displaced. So they're going to need to be retrained. But one of the things that's challenging is nobody really says much beyond that. They need retraining, but then what? And it's not 100% clear that all the jobs are going to go away. A lot of them are actually going to evolve. And so I'm working with some colleagues of mine, and we're developing a model about maintaining employability. And there's places where the university can play a role, and there's places where other players can play a role. And for a degree or diploma, to qualify for a first job, you need a degree or diploma. And the college or university can play a role there. But to master that first job, in other words, really deal with what's going on in that particular employer, in that particular thing, the type of credential that you need isn't a diploma, it's just simply satisfactory work performance or clearance to continue working. And so that's going to be a combination of on-the-job training and passing some kind of qualifying exam if the employer uses something like that. While people are in their job, sometimes there are changes, new systems, new ways of doing things. They're not drastic. And the goal of this kind of training is just simply to retain your employment. And it's really the responsibility of the employer to make these kinds of changes because they're usually instituted in the workplace. By the way, most of these don't really require extensive retraining. They're usually a 1-hour thing or a brief job aid can do the job. But then there will be times when people need to retrain, and that's because there are significantly changing circumstances. An employer decides to close a location, a job class is no longer needed. One of the best examples of that is the recent GM closing of several auto plants in North America because they were making one type of car and their future is in a different kind of car. And in these cases, this is where the universities can make a difference again because workers need additional degree, but they don't always want a degree. Sometimes they want something called an alternate credential, which is something that says, I can do this other job, but it's not necessarily taking a year, 2 years, or 3 years to get there. And so academic programs will do that, but we're going to be competing with our own continuing education units, with continuing education units from professional and industry organizations, and finally by private employers. And as this one says, really where we can make a difference is going to be at the extremes, at the first job and for the last job, retraining. But to deal with this market really requires that we support working students with shorter programs where people can get their degrees in less time. Speaking of time. Evening courses, because that's when students are available. Online courses, because they're more convenient. Centers for mature students which provide the same kind of support for students who are going back to school and have anxiety about that and managing a work on top of that. And finally, recognition. And degrees, as I mentioned, are one type, but it's not the only type of recognition that workers seek. One other thing I can say about Canada in closing is that we just recently instituted a set of tax credits for workers to go back and get retraining. It's supposed to help them cover the tuition costs. My own estimate is that it's not enough to really make a huge difference, but as they say, every little bit counts. So in summary, these are the factors that are required that affect the success of the Canadian system. And not only do they affect the success, but they prepare students to become lifelong learners. And with that, I'd like to say thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Professor Carolina. And last but not least, we'll have the Finland's unique experience, which will be presented by Dr. Ayla Lindfors, the professor in Department of Teacher Education, University of Turku, Finland. Professor Lindfors is chair of the Craft, Design, and Technology Teacher Program, runs several research and development projects, has published over 100 reviewed research articles in national and international journals. Now we welcome Professor, please.
Thank you. Shukran. First, I like to thank you, ICSSR Center, for the invitation. I feel that it's a privilege for me to experience your culture as a part of expert group in your national conference. Actually, I'm impressed of your efforts to develop education and the spirit of developing it. I also noticed that the question of competence development and future challenges is a worldwide concern. For example, EU finances competence development in higher education, and actually I'm as a part of one project called Fostering Competencies in Belarusian Higher Education. And yesterday I got mail that it's launched information on fostering competencies in higher education between EU and Asia. Unfortunately, not with United Arab Emirates, but I think soon that will happen also. Okay, my point of view to the Finnish education system is academic. Yes, I'm a professor in craft design and technology education in the Department of Teacher Education. But I have also tested the Finnish educational system and experienced it as a parent. Since I have 6 children, 3 sons and 3 daughters. And you know, many people has asked me that how is it possible that you have an academic career and 6 children? And I have joked to say that I take my work so seriously that I have 1 child in every level of in the Finnish educational system. So that used to be, because nowadays I have 2 in secondary education and all the others in higher education or even in work life. So, I think we all agree the importance of developing competencies. And as I said, it's a worldwide concern because we know the future challenges that there will be many to be solved. It's important to agree what is important, but it's very important to ask how this will be put into the practice. Okay. So I hope that I can give you some ideas how we have tried to put educational development in practice in Finland. I don't say that it's the best of the world. It's one insight how to make it in practice. So, just a map to show you where I come from. Finland is a northern country, so it's almost 5,000 kilometers from here. First in my presentation, I'll give some basic knowledge and impressions from the history of education in Finland, and then a description of basic or comprehensive education. Then some facts about teacher education, and especially I focus on craft design and technology education in comprehensive education as well as in teacher education. So, Finland is a northern country. Just to get you some impressions, how is it with us? If you happen to leave your car somewhere and let it stay a couple of days when it's snowing, there is the possibility that you can't find it anymore. So you have to be innovative to dig it up. After the winter, we wait for spring. We love the summertime. You know, your temperature here, your weather here now, it would be perfect for our summer. Just now in Finland, at 3 o'clock, it's so dark. Actually, we have to keep lights on all the day. It's so dark right at the moment. So I love to see the sun here. Okay. Some facts about Finland. So we have a quite large nation geographically, but we are only 5.5 million people there. We have 200,000 lakes. The parliamentary is republic. The capital city Helsinki. We have official languages, Finnish, Swedish, and also Sami as a regional language. And what we have, we don't have very much raw material in Finland. So we are the forest country. And we export forest industry products, but then high technology products, game industry, creative business. We have discussed about how to develop competencies in higher education. So it's also a question that when you start developing these competencies in higher education or earlier, and I would say that we have to start this as soon as possible. You know, in 1950s, 60s, there was a debate that what kind of basic education there would be best for Finland. And this professor, Uno Signeus, he insisted that the education, it's not just developing the basic skills like math, reading, and writing. The education should include arts, crafts, music, sport, social studies, so that you can develop the person and the citizen, not just knowledge. And actually, the technology education in the form we have it started in Finland, 1863. One of the basic principles in our education is equality. Till 1970, we had a dichotomy system that in the age of 10, 11, a pupil had to decide whether he or she chooses the vocational side or the academic one. And from 1970, we have had the comprehensive, pre-comprehensive education, 9 grades for all. Now there is a consideration to raise the age till 18 years. Well-being at school is part of our system, so the proper school lunch is served for every pupil and every school day. Then we have breaks between lessons, 15 minutes or 30 minutes, depending of the time of the day. And during the breaks, pupils go out unless it's not too cold. And it's not too cold unless the temperature is more minus than 20. So the meaning is to get nutrition and fresh air to be able to learn. So then, at the moment, every student has the right to educational support. Teachers use student-centered and integrative teaching methods, so it means that students have an active role in classrooms. And basically, we don't have major differences between schools. So you can put your kid to the neighbor school and the results will be good. For example, my kids, some of them wanted to some certain type of school. And I said to them, okay, if you choose that, you have to stand up 1 hour early in the morning to reach the school in the capital area. And that means that you have to go to bed 1 hour earlier. Is it worth of that? And so they went to the neighbor school and the results are good. We have very few private schools since the public school system is so good. So there are no need for private schools to get better results. And according to research, learning outcomes are more related to family background and social factors than schools. And education is free of charge at all levels. For example, me, I'm the example of the Finnish educational system. I come from a poor family, so I'm the first I have the first master degree in my family, also the doctorate degree, and also I'm the first professor in my family. And if I had to pay the higher education, I couldn't afford this to all my 6 kids. But for this far, it seems that they will become a good taxpayers after studying. Taxpayers. So the Finnish National Core Curriculum, the last one from 2014. So there are 7 basic areas we focus on. The active role of pupils is important. And also the idea that the schools make their local curriculum on the basis of this basic national core curriculum. So this curriculum is a norm to be followed. And we have the curriculum renovation in every 10th year. What is different in Finnish schools? I find that it's arts and crafts that we have. So this comes from the 1860 when the school system was built. So the minimum amount of weekly lesson hours during 9-year basic education in 224. And one lesson hour means 38 study hours, each 45 minutes. And we have more than 1/4 of these lesson hours arts, crafts, and sports. And the new research results tell us that to be able to learn, your brains need different kinds of experiences. And you learn in different ways. Different pupils learn in different ways. So we offer an opportunity to find a way that is yours. So the education system is based on trust, responsibility, and collaboration. There are very few national or local evaluations and assessment. No inspections in basic education. So we trust on principals and teachers that they are professionals in their work. And investing in education starts with investing in quality teacher education. So in Finland, the teacher is an independent expert who is expected to have a competence to develop his or her work. This means that we have the master level teacher education to be able to get a permanent teacher position in comprehensive education, even in primary school, so you have to have a master of education. During teacher education, student teachers are trained in co-teaching and collaboration. And our teacher education is research-based and up-to-date the scientific research and the development, as well as intertwining the theory and practice. So I tell you a little bit about subject teacher degree in craft design and technology education. So we have the main discipline, craft design and technology education in four universities in Finland. Focused a little bit differently, but so. In our subject teacher education, the student teachers study 140 credits, craft design and technology, and its pedagogy. The goal is to, for student teachers, the goal is to become an expert in teaching and learning, to understand the ethical and scientific base of CDT, learning to be innovative, to be research-oriented, to be future-oriented, and to acquire excellent pedagogical competence to be able to motivate and guide learners in various learning contexts. And then the craft design and technology education subject in school. What we aim with the subject, it's about what happens in practice. The students are making different kinds of projects. We can call them STEM projects. They are focused differently, so that there will be different various experiences for all students. So what we aim to, it's technological literacy, the basics of innovation competencies, everyday skills, enjoyment and flow experiences, self-regulation, self-assessment, and project management skills. And the objective is that every pupil has to get meaningful learning experiences, to get to learn technology, to use it critically, and to develop ethically sustainable technological solutions to the world we live in. We talk about pedagogical innovation process, and we are not aiming at radical innovation, of course not, but we are teaching the process, how you solve problems and challenges, how you invent something new you didn't know before existed. We have spoken a lot about soft skills, generic skills. This is one categorization we made on the basis of systematic review, quite large one. We made this kind of classification about individual innovation competence, so that for teachers it's possible to notice that what kind of content they have to target in, because the pupils are different and they need different tutoring in different skills and knowledge. What is important is authentic learning assignments. We try to find relevant assignments. For example, in one case, the student developed they made I'm nervous because the time is going. You know, they made a project about how to make weather stations. And after they got the weather stations ready, so they collected the weather data and they sent it to the national database. So other examples: design a solution that helps you in cold climate sustainably. Design a safe solution how car drivers could notice people in dark road. Design an instrument for a school band. These are examples. Our makerspace is some photos. So we have digital modeling, digital design, and fabrication. And then we have hand tools, power tools, and the big machines also. So, and we use different materials how to solve these problems in practice. Few slides more. Our government has had a key program for education and for teacher education. And in my university, so we have two national projects, InnoComp, that is for higher primary education and secondary education pupils and teachers, and then InnoPlay, that is for 5 to 8 years old children, craft, design and technology education promotion. And so the idea is that the teacher education institution, teacher educators, student teachers, so we go to the work context in schools around us, and then our students make the development projects together with the field teachers. And with this way, we think that we can promote the technology education and the pedagogical culture to move further.
Professor, the time is up, I'm sorry.
And the last, if you want to know more about technology education, craft design and technology education, so in my university there will be the worldwide conference, PAT conference, Technology in Our Hands, Creative Pedagogy and Ambitious Teacher Education. And unfortunately, the abstract submission is closed, but since I'm the chair of the conference, so we can be flexible with the dates, but strict with the double-blind review process. Okay, so if you're interested in after this, so I can give you some brochures. Kiitos, thank you, shukran.
Thank you very much indeed, Professor Lindfors. After these three rich and informative presentations about different experiences, it's time for the Q&A session. Kindly bear in mind, we have limited time, so we can start the Q&A.
السلام عليكم. السؤال
My question to our speaker, regarding your own ambition, to where to reach regarding artificial intelligence after 10 years from now, where you would like to reach? What's your ambition regarding this new technology?
We consider it so that in personal life, a student, an adult, meets challenges. Also in working life. And we try to develop the competencies that they don't raise their hands and say, we can't do this. We try to develop competencies that the future citizens are prepared to solve problems and find solutions to the challenges they have in their personal life or in their work life.
Yeah, I think with artificial intelligence there are a few things. First, there's the people that will need to, their jobs will be affected by it. And so in the university level, we want to prepare people to develop AI routines and understand how they work and understand the algorithms from them. When it comes to their personal lives, how it affects them once they're out, I think, again, it's the same basic concept, understanding how the artificial intelligence is working, because it's, even though it's the word artificial, it's based on human activity and human inclinations. And so if they understand where humanity has entered into some of this decision making, they can understand how the decisions are made. I think the other thing too is, depending on the field, there are different applications of it. I work in a field of educational technology, so my primary interest is in, will the art, from an educational viewpoint, when, first of all, can artificial intelligence do some of the marking of papers? It's already capable to do that, but it's not where it needs to be. What situations will it be used to do that? And for the time being, it's been mentioned before, it requires a very large data set, so it's only going to be for large classes where that will happen. And then finally, for personalized tutoring, which will most likely happen in what's called gatekeeper subjects, which are subjects in which students must succeed or they're not going to be able to continue their education. And I think that's where the high stakes are, and I think for the next probably 10 to 30 years, that's where artificial intelligence will probably have the most impact. Let me just add one more that I thought of. There's also the evaluation of the data on people's performance. It's not 100% perfect yet, but we're starting to find relationships through artificial intelligence and data analytics that says if someone does A, it has a long-term effect B down the road. And some of them are not things that we would normally see. One of my favorite examples is from the nursing school at Georgia State University, where they thought a particular course was a gatekeeper course. In other words, students failed that, they weren't going to succeed in the program. It turns out there was a gatekeeper course, it just wasn't the one they thought it was. And they found that the performance was actually affected by a very different course in that curriculum. So that's my response.
I think the speakers already talk about particular uses of artificial intelligence and the impact going forward. I think I just want to remind everyone of the historical background of artificial intelligence. In the 1980s, there was a spate where artificial intelligence was expected to take over a lot of things. It didn't do that because it couldn't progress beyond a certain hard limit. I think what the progress has been happening nowadays, a lot to do with the much more powerful computing that is available, as well as the much bigger data sets that we can feed into the artificial intelligence systems. And there is a danger of overestimating what artificial intelligence can do. And we are at the stage where we are getting excited about it, and therefore we tend to think it can do a lot of things. But I wouldn't think that would actually happen. There will be cycles. I think there will be, you heat it up, and then it would die down a little bit, and then there'll be the next phase. And that has to be enabled by advances in computing.
I do appreciate three of the speakers citing the best successful examples in the world in the field of education. I would like to ask Professor Ilya about the Finnish methodology. Teachers have the pivotal role in making education successful or making generations educated. Do you have any specific criterion for selecting students for enrollment in teacher education, or directly after completing the degree program, can they enter to the program or without considering their basic skills or aptitude towards teaching or their care or love, affection towards children? You know, in India, we actually facing the issue. This is a comfortable job and well-paid job in India. Then people directly, after getting their degree, they getting an entrance to enrollment to teacher education, and they don't know anything about education, or they are not concerned about the well-being of children. I think you can do something in this regard.
Okay. Yes, in Finland, we have the different situation than many countries. So teacher profession is quite highly yes, perceived. And you know, we have a double level applicant system. First, there is an academic test, and if you get enough points, so you can get to the second level of the application, and that is the application test actually. And in this, test, there are different parts, and your skills, your attitude, your will to be a teacher, and your commitment to the career will be evaluated. And also in our education program, there is problem-solving test as a part of this application process. And it depends of the program, but there might be 20-25 applicants.
هناك عدد من المتقدمين إلى البرامج التعليم، فبالتالي نحن نحاول أن نأخذ الأفضل.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Peace be upon you. I am Manal Abbas from Zayed Higher Institution. I am a specialized teacher in qualifying the people of determination, the people with disabilities. First, I would like to thank the ECSSR, and I would like to thank the attendees and the honorable, and I would like to speak to Dr. Ila and Dr. Carlin, who spoke about how Canada is dealing with SEN students and supporting them. Is it possible? What mechanisms and procedures you support the SEN students in Finland or even in Canada? Thank you very much.
To make sure all our students are supported. I can mostly explain what we do at the university level, but it's also pretty universal. We have some basic principles that guide the design of all of our education, and then we have specific supports. There's a concept out there called universal design for education. It's specifically an outgrowth of the US Section 508, which are the guidelines for persons with disabilities. But at first it was just simply making physical spaces accessible, then they extended them over into web spaces, and now educational spaces. But the idea behind universal design for learning is it's not designing for persons with disabilities. It's designed to make learning accessible to all learners. Because even if someone isn't labeled as having a disability, they still might not understand what you're doing. So the idea is just simply to make sure that you're being as clear and as helpful as you can possibly be. So that's one major effort. And I'm encapsulating a huge concept in a minute, so I'm probably not doing it justice. The second thing that we do is we have these centers, we call it the Accessibility Center at my university. And a student can register with the Accessibility Center, and every time they take a course, a notice goes out to their instructor informing them that they have a student with needs. They tell them what the accommodations are. They don't tell them what the issue is. The student wants to disclose to a professor that they have an emotional issue, that they have a physical, usually you can tell the physical issues, but they have an emotional issue or a learning disability, they can choose to do so. But if not, the student doesn't have to disclose, but the accommodation is known to the professor, and it's expected that the professor will accommodate that student. I had the privilege last spring of actually talking to a group of students about this particular issue, about the difference between disclosing their disability versus just simply having the professor aware of their accommodation and making them comfortable with the fact it's enough for me to know as their professor you need to take a test in a special place where you have an extra time to process this. I happen to use project-based assignments, so even though many of my students will have the need for accommodation, I don't have a need to give it to them because the accommodation is given to every student already. In addition, we have specific support for various psychological needs, and everything from individual counseling to people who are victims of crime. We have support services for them. financial support, not necessarily in terms of the money going to them, but understanding how to budget better and more effectively. And that's a really quick rundown, but that's some of the stuff that we do to support our students.
Okay, I agree with the accessibility issues. In Finland, one of the equality principles is that the education is accessible for everybody. 10-15 years ago, we used to have special schools, but then there is nearly all the special schools. We don't have them anymore, and special need students are integrated to normal classrooms. This, I'm not a special education expert, but as far as I understand, this is a little bit, this is a kind of challenge. When there is a special needs student in one group, so it means that there is needs to the teacher to be able to understand properly the issue. And to help the teacher, there are usually helpers in the classroom. It depends on the disabilities, that if there are one helper for a couple of students or for one helper for one student. But nowadays there is talk that should we have smaller groups for special needs students, because it's also a challenge to be in a large group.
So I think you want to add something?
Yeah, I want to echo what Professor Ella has said. We have special needs schools, especially for these kids. But on the other hand, our philosophy is as many of them should go into the regular schools as possible. So our current numbers is that 80% of those with special needs are in the normal schools, and 20% are on the special ones.
ناخذ سؤال الأخير.
Dr. Reem Hashim.
Question to Finland. There's a big talk here, about the lessons that we can learn from Finland experience in education. And I've seen that in my capacity as a teacher and a student as well. However, with every experience, we have factors of success and challenges as well to the educational system. Through your talk, we've heard the factors or the elements of success in Finland's experience in education. However, we did not really hear much about the challenges. For example, when we talked about Singapore, we talked about, the big challenge of keeping the big records of success and at the same time capturing the best minds and keep, supporting the talents. So, from your point of view, what are some of the challenges that are faced by the educational system in Finland that we have to be aware of when we are trying to learn lessons from that educational system? Thank you.
Professor Lenfors.
I comment first on common level. You know that usually, or according to PISA results, so one part of our success is that we have a very good support for pupils, so that the difference between the best pupil and the less succeeded pupil is not that large. So that is part of our success, the support for a pupil. But then on common level, worldwide, when we get these PISA results, And there is need to have a better learning results in the future. So the common solution is to add mathematics, foreign languages, physics and chemistry, for example. In Finland, we have had the arts, crafts, and this kind of subject as a part of curriculum. And now, in the latest curriculum, so the part that is for everybody, that was extended. Because there seems to be that if the school is too theoretical, so the problem starts. And if it's too theoretical, so it seems that there will be dropouts. The dropout thing is multidimensional, and it's not just one reason for that. But to avoid the school being and developing too theoretical, we have added the active part of learning, the inquiry learning, the experiential learning. Did I answer to your question?
Professor,
I'm a
we don't
teacher,
have
so
time.
I'm pretty sure that my voice is is high enough. But I'm still concerned about learning about the challenges that you face in the educational system. التحديات اللي بتواجه التعليم في فنلندا. لأنه because I believe that in every system, regardless of how successful it is, there would be the challenges and there would be the elements of success. So I would like to learn more about that because, I mean, recently...
Yeah, the question is clear. Thank you.
You know, one challenge is the dropouts. So, but to solve this problem, in the last curriculum, there was added more arts and crafts to everybody, and we have understood that the educational problems, there might be problems in schools too, of course, but quite big part of the explanation are the social background factors. And now we are trying to focus on this part and try to find the pupils who need special support before they have too complicated problems.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of this panel, my guest and I would like to thank the Emirates Center of Strategic Studies and Research for inviting us to share our thoughts and experiences and network with likely-minded experts. Thank you very much indeed.
شكرا لجميع المشاركين في
Thank you very much for all the participants. Now I will read the final remarks and recommendations regarding this conference, and you will find a copy on your seat, and after that we will open discussions and comments. The participants at the end of this conference, which was organized by ECSSR in Abu Dhabi on the 12th and 13th of November, talking about the future, the education and jobs of future, developing qualified human capital to success in the UAE progress, with the participants of many experts regionally and internationally. We would like to thank the UAE leadership. We would like to thank also Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed, the president of UAE, for his care about education and the future challenges, and also talking about the fourth industrial revolution and artificial intelligence. Our participants thanked His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, and also the Deputy Supreme Commander for his high passion for education and his great effort in developing the educational system within this fast changing world because of the international change, and also with Mohammed bin Zayed a smart challenge or artificial intelligence summit, and order to work with this regard. Also, the participant thanks His Excellency Mr. Jamal Al-Suwaidi, the Director of ECSSR, for his role on shedding lights on the importance of education as the driver for development, and which is very important for any community development. After 2 days full of ideas, visions, opinions, and experts, the conference reached to these recommendations: the importance to improve the Emirati efforts capabilities that suit the fast-changing world, especially in the field of economic-based economy and also knowledge-based economy and also artificial intelligence. Secondly, developing curriculum in order to cope up with the international changes in the field of the fourth revolution and also artificial intelligence, focusing on science, math, and technology. Thirdly, increase the cooperation between the partners in education and between the job markets, governments, universities, employers, and even students in developing the different plans to develop education and focusing on the job market skills. We need long-term and short-term plans. Fourthly, increasing investments in developing the human capital through the training life, and also increasing the human capital skills in order to suit the future changes. Number 5, paying more attention in developing the core skills within students to cope up with the demands for the future market, and also focusing on problem solving, critical thinking, and innovation, with a great emphasis in developing the programs to identify their talents and gifts in early stage in order to invest it in a good way. Number 6, to requalify the teachers, academics, and make sure they have got the capability and skills which enable them to transfer the modern knowledge to students. Number 7, paying special attention to the social, ethical for the fourth revolution and also artificial intelligence, which has maybe a negative impact on the community if it's not used in a good way. Number 8, paying special attention to vocational technical education and open the field for vocational students to join universities in different specialized courses. Number 9, increase the budget for scientific research and increase the private sector in order to fund the different research and invest in the long-term investments in science and also in research. Number 10, working on building academic partnership effective with the international and regional excellent institutions in inclusion and technology for education on the global level. Number 11, working hard in facing challenges with the people with determination in order to join the job market by increasing the inclusive employment and also provide them with the training program that they need. Number 12, the last one, benefiting from the expert success and also the other international programs like Singapore, like Canada, and also others, and try to cope up with the modern programs, with the modern teaching methodologies, and implement it in the UAE. Now we open the floor for questions, comments. If there are any question or comments, please.
My name is Jaakko Skansi. I'm from the Embassy of Finland, Council for Science and Education, based here in Abu Dhabi. First of all, thank you for very interesting arena yesterday and today. There have been a lot of interesting topics discussed here. Thank you for the organizer as well. I think one thing that was probably already covered to some extent, but what I would like to underline is the question of what's being measured when we talk about assessment and evaluation. There's a lot of talk about skills, basic skills. There's a lot of talk about problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, innovation. But many of the school systems, whether they are primary, secondary, or even higher education, still rely on quite classical ways of assessing and evaluating the students. And as long as we don't have proper ways of actually assessing these 21st century skills, or whatever you want to call them, we are still going to do a lot of things the old-fashioned way. So has anyone got any ideas how to address these? I think this is a critical question for developing the education system further. We've been struggling with this in Finland, and there's been a lot of initiatives starting all the way from primary years. But still, there are the elements of assessing in a very classical way.
Thank you. سؤال آخر أمد أتفضل أستاذ.
عفوا أنا بس تعقيب على الأسئلة اللي سألتها قبل سابقا.
Another question I discussed with some doctors regarding the jobs for people of determination. Still there is a gap. After a few years, there will be bigger gap between the countries who are developing their scientific systems, and I am thinking the gap will be widening. Is there a new stage regarding illiteracy, new illiteracy? And some people, they are hiding the information for the future. You can ask after recommendations, but we will put this one in the recommendation. Any other questions? In fact, I would like to congratulate the effort for the SCSSR, and it has been proven that the center is working very hard in the field to enrich the institutions. This is the 10th conference, and there is very important recommendations. The speakers and experts, they are high esteemed experts and speakers. I would like a name of these honorable attendees, hoping that these recommendations find a hearing ears and also to be adopted in the educational institutions, governmental entities, private sector, to invest as it is considered the core ideas behind this conference. So, to be fruitful, we need these recommendations to be adopted, and we need to feel, to make it tangible, the implementation of this recommendation. We are racing with time, and we don't want to be late in coping up with the other countries. Thank you very much. The last question or comment? Peace be upon you, Ali Hamad. The final remarks and recommendation is full of information and data, and we are really very proud of it. Yesterday and today we spoke about the quality of food, quality of life. we want to focus more about the quality of life, the quality of food, and the quality of air. If the students not eating well, they will not be able to invent and study. How they will get high results? So we need to focus on the high quality life for students. The second one, or the second point, the definition with the international scholarships, Mr. Jum'a, and the presidential affairs. If we can speak about the different scholarship offices in the country. Thank you very much for your efforts. And now, the final remarks from His Excellency Jamal Sanad al-Suwaid, Director General of ECSSR, will be said by in the name of Allah. Our honorable guests, peace be upon you. I'm here proud at the end of this annual conference for education, which lasted for 2 days, about education and jobs of the future, developing qualified human capital to succeed the UAE progress. I would like here to thank you very much for attending this conference, and also you paying attention and your participation with the different activities and discussions. Here I would like to thank for all these expert researchers who joined us in this conference, and your participation make this conference very valuable. So thank you very much. And also we build on their participation and your opinions, and so we can develop our human capital in the UAE through education, which will enable development. Our honorable guests, in SCSSR, we are doing our best to cope up with the modern trends in different fields. And so this conference was dedicated for the role of education in developing qualified human capital in UAE to enable us to compete well in the international job market, especially after the fourth industrial revolution and artificial intelligence, to equip these people with the needed skills. Our honorable guests, we would like to focus for you all that we will work hard to make this conference with its recommendation an important strategic field stream for education development in UAE, as we believe in the importance of scientific research in the different fields. At the end, I would like to thank you very much again, with all gratitude, hoping that you spent very useful information and wishing you all the best in the future. Thank you very much. At the end of this annual conference, under the topic Education, Jobs of Education, Developing Qualified Human Capital to Secure UAE's Progress, again in name of His Excellency Jamal Sanad al-Suwaidi, Director General for ECSSR, I would like to thank you very much for your attendance, and thank you very much again. Wish you all the best. Thank you very much.